My father wore the same old coat every single day for more than 30 years. It was a brown coat, a heavy wool coat. It was old, and it was worn, and it had small patches on both elbows. The color had faded from a warm chestnut brown to a soft, tired grey-brown, like a leaf at the end of autumn. The buttons did not all match. One of them was black. The others were brown. He had sewn that black button on himself many years ago, and he had never bothered to change it. We told him to throw it away. We told him many times. My name is Daniel, and this is the story of my father and his old coat and the thing we found inside it after he was gone. It is a story I did not understand for most of my life. I understand it now, and I want to tell it to you, slowly and carefully. From the very beginning, because it changed me, and because I do not want to forget a single part of it. Let me begin with my father. My father's name was Arthur. He was a quiet man. He was not a big man, and he was not a loud man, and he was not the kind of man that people notice when he walks into a room. He was a carpenter. He worked with wood. He built tables and chairs and doors and cabinets and small wooden boxes with careful little joints in the corners. His hands were rough and strong, and they always smelled a little bit like sawdust and oil. He grew up poor, very poor. He often told me that when he was a boy, his family had only one pair of shoes for two brothers, and they took turns wearing them. One day, one brother wore the shoes, and the next day, the other brother wore the shoes. On the days he did not have the shoes, my father walked to school with bare feet, even in the cold. He did not tell me these stories to make me feel sorry for him. He told me these stories so that I would understand something. He wanted me to understand that things do not matter, that shoes do not matter, that coats do not matter, that the only things that matter are the people you love, and the work you do with your own two hands, and the way you treat other people. I did not understand this when I was young. I thought I understood it, but I did not. My mother's name was Margaret. She was a kind woman with soft brown eyes and a quiet laugh. She and my father were married in a small church in our small town on a cold morning in early spring. My father was 24 years old. He did not have money for a fine suit. He did not have money for anything fine at all. But he had one good coat. It was brown, and it was warm, and it was made of thick wool. My mother had saved for many months to buy it for him. She bought it as a wedding gift. She wanted her husband to have one good thing, one warm thing, one thing that would last. And on the morning they were married, my father wore that brown wool coat, and my mother said he looked like the most handsome man in the whole world. That was the coat. That same coat. The old coat. My father wore that coat on the day he was married, and he wore that same coat all the years that followed, until the very end of his life. I did not know that story when I was a boy. I did not know why the coat was so important to him. To me, it was just an old coat. An old, ugly, embarrassing old coat. I was a child, and then I was a young man, and I only saw the outside of things. I did not see what was underneath. Let me tell you about our home and our life when I was small. We lived in a small house at the edge of town. It had 2 bedrooms and a small kitchen, and a wood stove that my father kept burning in the winter. My sister and I shared one bedroom. My sister's name is Emily. She is 2 years younger than me. Our parents shared the other bedroom. We did not have much money. My father worked hard, 6 days a week, from early in the morning until the sun went down. My mother took care of the house and the garden, and later she took in sewing work from the neighbors to earn a little extra. But even with all their work, there was never very much money. There was enough for food, there was enough for the small house, but there was not much more than that. And yet, I want you to know something. Our home was warm. Our home was full of love. My mother sang while she cooked. My father told us stories at night, funny stories and sad stories, and stories he made up as he went along. On Sunday afternoons, my father would take Emily and me for long walks in the woods behind our house. and he would teach us the names of the trees, and the names of the birds, and how to walk quietly so that we could watch the deer. I remember those walks. My father always wore his brown coat, and in the winter, when it was very cold, he would open his big coat and pull Emily and me inside it, one child under each arm, and we would walk home together, all three of us wrapped inside that one warm coat, laughing. I did not know then how happy I was. Children never know. It is only later, when everything is gone, that you look back and you understand. That was the happiest time of my whole life, and I did not even know it while it was happening. My father taught me to work with wood. On Saturday afternoons when I was small, he would let me sit with him in his little shed. He would give me a small piece of softwood and a small tool, and he would guide my hands with his big, rough hands, and together we would make things. A little wooden boat, a small box, a toy horse for Emily. He was patient. He never shouted. When I made a mistake, when I cut the wood the wrong way, he would only smile and say, "That is how we learn, son. A man who never made a mistake never made anything at all." And then he would show me how to fix it. I remember the smell of that shed, wood and oil, and the warm smell of my father. I remember the light coming through the small, dusty window. I remember how safe I felt there, sitting beside him, learning to build. He wore his brown coat in the shed in the winter, with the sleeves rolled up, and there was always a little sawdust on it, caught in the wool. My father was the kindest man in our town. I want you to understand this about him. When a neighbor's roof leaked, my father fixed it, and he would not take any money. When old Mrs. Baker down the road could no longer climb her front steps, my father built her a wooden ramp, quietly, over one weekend, and told her it was nothing, it was just some spare wood. When a poor family arrived in our town with nothing, my father made them a table and 2 chairs and left them by their door in the night, so that they would not have to feel ashamed. He never spoke about these things. I only learned about most of them later, much later, from other people. He did good quietly, and he expected nothing back. That was the kind of man my father was. And he wore his old brown coat while he did all of it. Then, when I was 14 years old, my mother became sick. It started with a small cough, just a small cough, in the autumn. We did not worry very much at first, but the cough did not go away. It got worse. She became tired, she became thin. The doctor came, and then another doctor came, and their faces were serious, and they spoke to my father in low voices in the kitchen while Emily and I sat on the stairs and tried to hear. My mother was sick for almost a year. My father spent every bit of money he had saved on doctors and on medicine. He sold his tools, some of them, the good ones, to pay for one more visit, one more bottle of medicine, one more small hope. He sat by her bed every night. He held her hand. He wore his brown coat even inside the house that winter, because we could not afford to keep the stove burning all night and the house was cold. My mother died in the spring, almost exactly on the anniversary of the day she and my father were married. I will not tell you very much about that time, because it still hurts, even now, all these years later. I will only tell you that my father did not cry in front of us. He was strong for Emily and me. He held us, and he told us that our mother loved us, and that she would always be with us in our hearts. He said it in a steady voice. He was the strong one. He was the one who held everything together. But one night, a few days after the funeral, I woke up in the dark. I heard a sound, a small broken sound coming from downstairs. I went to the top of the stairs, quietly, the way my father had taught me to walk in the woods, and I looked down. My father was sitting alone at the kitchen table, in the dark, wearing his brown coat, and he was holding the coat closed around himself with both arms, the way he used to hold Emily and me on our winter walks. And he was crying like I had never seen a person cry, not loudly, quietly, but his whole body was shaking. I did not go down. I was afraid. I did not know what to say. I was only 14, and I did not have the words. So I went back to my bed, and I lay in the dark, and I listened to my father cry, and I did not understand, not fully, that he was holding on to the last warm thing my mother had ever given him. I understand it now, but I did not understand it then. After my mother died, my father raised us alone. He got up before the sun. He made our breakfast. He packed our lunches. He sent us to school with clean clothes and combed hair. He worked all day. He came home and he made our dinner and he helped us with our schoolwork and he told us stories, though the stories were quieter now and a little sadder. He did the work of two parents all by himself and he never once complained. Not once. He wanted more for us than he had ever had for himself. That was the one thing he wanted, above everything. He wanted Emily and me to have a better life, a bigger life. A life with more than one pair of shoes and one warm coat. You are going to go to good schools, he told us. You are going to have good jobs. You are going to live in warm houses, and you are never going to be cold, and you are never going to be hungry. I promise you that. I will make it happen. Whatever it costs me, I will make it happen. And he did. He worked harder than any man I have ever known. He took every job he could find. He worked on Sundays. He built furniture late into the night in the small shed behind our house after we had gone to bed. I would wake sometimes and see the light on in the shed and hear the soft sound of his tools and know that my father was still working, still building, still saving so that Emily and I could have our better life. I remember one Christmas after my mother had died. We did not have much money that year. We did not have much money any year, but that year was especially hard because my father had been sick for a few weeks and could not work, and so there was even less than usual. I was young, and I was foolish, and I wanted a bicycle. All the other boys at school had bicycles, and I wanted one so badly that it was all I could think about. I asked my father for a bicycle for Christmas. I did not think about money. Children do not think about money. I only thought about the shining red bicycle in the shop window in town. On Christmas morning, there was no bicycle. Of course there was no bicycle. But there, under our small tree, was a gift my father had made for me with his own hands. It was a beautiful little wooden desk, sanded smooth and polished, with a small drawer that slid in and out, and a place to keep my school books. He had made it late at night, in the shed, in the cold, working by lamplight after his long days, so that his son would have somewhere good to study and become a great man one day. I am ashamed to tell you that I cried that morning, and not with happiness. I cried because it was not a bicycle. I saw the hurt in my father's eyes, just for a moment, before he hid it and smiled and told me it was all right, that maybe next year there would be a bicycle. He wore his brown coat that cold morning in our cold house, and he had given me the best thing he could make with his own two hands, and I had cried because it was not the shining thing in the shop window. I still have that little desk. I kept it all these years. It sits in my house now, and it is worth more to me than any expensive thing I have ever bought. I run my hand over the smooth wood sometimes, and I feel the hours of love my father put into it, and I am so ashamed of the boy who cried for a bicycle. But that boy did not understand yet. He had not learned to see what was underneath. He saved every coin. He did not spend money on himself. He did not buy new clothes. He did not buy nice things. He ate simple food. And he wore the same brown coat year after year after year, patching it when it tore, sewing on buttons when they fell off, keeping it clean and mended, because a new coat was money, and money was for his children, not for himself. We did not fully see it. We were children. We took it. We took all of it, all his work, all his love, all his sacrifice, and we thought it was normal. The way children always think their parents' love is normal, like the air, like something that will always be there. Emily and I grew up, and my father's dream came true. We did well in school. We won small scholarships. We went away to the city, to good universities. My father stood at the bus station on the day I left for university, wearing his brown coat, and he shook my hand, and his eyes were shining, and he said, "Go on, son. Go and have the life I dreamed for you. I am so proud of you. I have never been so proud." I went to the city. I studied hard. I became a businessman. I was good at it. I worked in a tall building made of glass and steel. I wore fine suits. I bought a big car and then a bigger car. I got married to a kind woman named Sarah, and we had 2 children of our own, a boy and a girl. We bought a large house with many rooms and a green garden. I had everything my father had dreamed for me. I had the better life. Emily became a lawyer. She was very successful too. She had her own big house, and her own fine clothes, and her own busy, important life. I remember a birthday dinner, one year. It was Emily's birthday, and we took our father to a fine restaurant in the city, a place with white tablecloths and soft music and waiters in black suits. My father had never been in a place like that in his whole life. He came in his brown coat, of course, and I saw the head waiter look at him from head to toe, slowly, with a small cold smile, the way rich people look at the poor. The waiter was rude to my father. He spoke to him slowly, as if my father were a foolish child, and he made him wait, and he gave him a bad table in the corner. I was angry, but I was not angry at the waiter. God forgive me, I was angry at my father, for coming in that coat, for making us look poor in front of these fine people. But do you know what my father did? He was not angry at the rude waiter at all. When the young man brought the food, my father looked up at him with his kind eyes and said, "Thank you, son, you work very hard. It is not easy being on your feet all night. My wife used to do work like this. God bless you." And I saw the young waiter's face change. I saw the coldness melt. By the end of the night, that same waiter was smiling at my father and calling him sir with real respect and telling him about his own family. My father, in his old coat, had more dignity than every rich person in that room. But I was too blind to see it. I saw only the coat. There was another time. My father came to visit us, and my son was in a school play. My father wanted to come and watch his grandson, so we all went to the school together. And my father wore the coat, and I felt the old shame rise up in me as we walked into that hall full of other parents in their nice clothes. But my children, they were not ashamed. That is the thing about children. They see the truth that grown people forget. My son ran to my father and jumped into his arms, into that old brown coat, and shouted, "Grandpa, you came! You came!" And after the play, my little daughter climbed onto my father's lap and fell asleep there, with her small face pressed against the warm brown wool of the coat, exactly the way I used to do on those winter walks. My children loved that coat. They loved the smell of it and the warmth of it and the man inside it. Only I, the grown man, the successful man, was ashamed. Only I. We had become exactly what our father wanted us to become. We had the warm houses. We had the good jobs. We were never cold, and we were never hungry. And somewhere along the way, without noticing it, without ever deciding to, we became a little bit ashamed of where we came from. This is a hard thing to say. It is an ugly thing to say. But I promised to tell you this story honestly, so I will say it. We became ashamed of our small beginnings. We became ashamed of the small house at the edge of town. And, God forgive me, we became ashamed of our father's old brown coat. He still wore it. Of course he still wore it. He wore it everywhere. He wore it when he came to visit us in the city. He would arrive on the bus, an old man now, with white hair and a bent back and rough carpenter's hands, wearing that same faded brown coat with the patched elbows and the black button that did not match. And I would see the way people looked at him. I would see the way my rich neighbors glanced at him and then glanced at me with a small question in their eyes. I would see the way the waiters looked at him when we took him to nice restaurants, and I felt ashamed. I am so sorry to say it, but I felt ashamed of my own father, the best man I have ever known, because of a coat. "Dad," I said to him one day, "let me buy you a new coat. A good one, a warm one. It would be my gift to you." "I have a coat," he said. "This one is fine." "But it's old, Dad. It's worn out. Look, the elbows are patched. The buttons don't match. Please, let me buy you a nice new one. You deserve a nice new coat." He smiled at me, a small, gentle smile, and he put his rough hand over the front of the coat, over his chest, the way he always did. "This coat is warm," he said. "This coat has been with me a long time. I don't need a new one. But thank you, son. Thank you for thinking of me. I did not understand why he was so stubborn about it. I thought it was pride. I thought it was the pride of an old man who did not want to accept a gift from his son. I did not understand. I did not see his hand resting over his chest, over that special place in the coat. I saw only the outside. I saw only an old, ugly coat that embarrassed me. Emily tried too. She bought him a beautiful new coat one year for his birthday. A fine, dark, expensive coat. She wrapped it in nice paper and gave it to him with a big smile. My father thanked her. He said it was beautiful. He said it was too fine for an old carpenter like him. He hung it carefully in his closet. And he never wore it. Not once. He kept wearing the old brown coat. Emily was hurt. He doesn't appreciate anything, she said to me on the phone. I spent so much money on that coat, and he just leaves it in the closet and keeps wearing that awful old rag. It's embarrassing. What will people think? I know, I said. I know, he's stubborn. Old people are stubborn. We talked about our own father that way. Like he was a problem. Like his coat was a problem. We who owed him everything. We who were only alive and only successful because of every coin he had saved by wearing that same old coat for 30 years so that we could have everything. We did not see it. We were blind. We had the better life he gave us, and it had made us small, and it had made us blind, and we did not even know it. Now I have to tell you about the worst thing I ever did. It was the night of a big dinner. I had worked for many years at my company, and finally, I was given a great honor. I was made a partner. It was the biggest night of my career. My company held a large, fine dinner in a grand hotel to celebrate. All the most important people would be there. My bosses, my colleagues, rich and powerful people in beautiful clothes. I invited my father. Of course I invited him. He was so proud of me. He put on his best shirt, and he shined his old shoes, and he took the long bus ride to the city, and he came to my grand dinner, wearing his brown coat. When he walked into that grand hotel, with its crystal lights, and its marble floors, and its rich perfumed guests, I saw him through the eyes of all those important people. I saw a poor old man in a faded, patched, ugly coat, and I was ashamed. The shame rose up in me like something hot and sick, and I am so sorry, but it was stronger than my love in that terrible moment. It was stronger than everything good in me. I walked quickly to my father. I did not say hello. I did not say I was glad he had come. I took his arm, and I pulled him a little to the side, near the door, away from the important people. And I spoke to him in a low, sharp, angry voice. Dad, why did you wear that coat? Tonight, of all nights. This is the most important night of my life. Everyone important is here, and you show up in that old rag. Couldn't you have worn the coat Emily gave you? Just once. Couldn't you have thought about how it looks for me? I watched my father's face as I said those words. I will never forget it. I will see it until the day I die. His face did not become angry. That would have been easier. Instead, his face became quiet. Something in his eyes went soft and far away, like a light being turned down low. He looked down at his old coat, at the patched elbows, at the black button. He looked at it as if he was seeing it the way I saw it, for the very first time. As if I had taught him, in that moment, to be ashamed of the one thing he loved most in the world. I'm sorry, son, he said very quietly. I did not think. I only wanted to look nice for you tonight. This is my good coat. I'm sorry. You're right. I should go. And he turned. This old man, my father, the man who had pulled me inside that same coat to keep me warm when I was a boy, the man who had sold his tools to save my mother, the man who had worked every Sunday of his life so that I could stand in that grand hotel in a fine suit. He turned and he walked out of the door, alone, into the cold night, to take the long bus ride home, and I let him go. I did not run after him. I did not call his name. I felt only relief that he was gone, that the important people had not looked at him too closely, that my embarrassment had walked out the door. I turned back to the party. I smiled. I shook hands. I let them call me a partner. I did not know that night that it was one of the last times I would ever see my father stand and walk on his own. That is the thing about the worst moments of our lives. We do not know, while they are happening, that they are the ones we will beg to take back for the rest of our days. I did not sleep that night. After the party was over, after all the important people had gone home, after they had all shaken my hand and called me a partner, I lay awake in my big house, in my warm bed, and I could not close my eyes. I kept seeing my father's face, not angry, never angry, just quiet and hurt, and turning away. I kept seeing him walk out the door, into the cold, an old man, alone, going to wait at the bus stop in the dark. I almost called him. Many times that night, I picked up the telephone, and I began to dial his number to say I was sorry, but I did not. My pride stopped me. My foolish pride. I told myself I would call him in the morning. I told myself I would explain, I would apologize, I would make it right, there would be time. There is always time, I thought. There will always be time. I was wrong. That is the cruelest lie we tell ourselves. There is not always time. One day the time runs out, and you are left holding all the words you never said, and there is no one left to say them to. My father became sick that winter. It was his heart. The doctor said his heart was old and tired. He said my father had worked his body too hard for too many years, and now it was worn out, like the elbows of his coat. There was medicine, but there was no cure. There was only time, and the time was growing short. I would like to tell you that I dropped everything and rushed to his side. I would like to tell you that I became a good son, at last, in his final days. And I did go to him. Emily and I both went. But we were busy. We had our important jobs, and our big houses, and our own children, and our full lives. We visited. We paid for good doctors. We sent nurses to his little house. But we did not stay. We did not sit by his bed the way he had sat by our mother's bed. We came, and we looked at our watches, and we left. He never complained. He was always so happy to see us. His whole face would light up when I walked into his room. "Daniel," he would say, as if my name was the best word in the language. "You came. You're so busy, and you came to see your old father. Thank you, son. Sit. Tell me everything. Tell me about the children." And I would sit for a little while, and I would tell him a little, and then I would look at my watch and say, I had to go. I had a meeting. I had a flight. I was so sorry. I would come again soon. And he would say, of course, son. You go. You have your important work. I'm so proud of you. Go on." He always wore the coat, even in bed. Even when he was very sick and very weak, he liked to have the old brown coat over him, on top of his blankets, like a second skin. The nurse told me he would not let her take it away. He kept one hand on it, always, resting over the chest, over that same spot. I thought it was just an old man's strange habit. I thought his mind was becoming confused. I did not understand that he was holding on to his whole life. His wedding, his wife, his children as babies. Everything he had ever loved was in that coat, and he was holding it close, at the end, the way you hold the hand of someone you are about to say goodbye to. There was one visit, near the end, that I think about all the time now. It was a cold afternoon. I had a flight that evening for an important business meeting in another city. But I stopped to see my father first, for 1 hour on my way to the airport. He was very weak that day. He could barely lift his head. But when I came in, he smiled his big smile, and he reached out his thin hand, and he held mine. His hand was so light. It felt like a bird. "Daniel," he said, "sit with me. Just for a little while. Tell me a story. You never tell me your stories anymore. When you were small, you told me 100 stories a day." And I wanted to. I truly wanted to. But I kept looking at the clock on the wall, thinking about my flight, thinking about my meeting, thinking about all my important things. So I sat for only a few minutes, and I did not tell him a story. And then I said, "I'm sorry, Dad. I have to go. I have a flight. I'll come back soon. I promise." And he held my hand a moment longer than usual. And he looked at me with those soft eyes, and he said, "Of course, son. You go. I know you are busy. I am so proud of you." And he let go of my hand. I did not tell him a story. I have thought about that 1,000 times since. He asked me for one small thing, one story, 1 hour, and I looked at a clock and I gave him a few minutes and a promise I did not keep. That meeting, that important meeting, I flew away for sea. I cannot even remember now what it was about. I cannot remember one single thing about it, but I remember every second of the hour I did not give my father. Every second. My father died on a quiet morning in late winter. The nurse was with him. Emily and I were not. We were both far away, in our important lives, doing our important things. He died alone, except for a kind nurse he had known for only a few weeks. The nurse told me that at the very end, he was calm. She said he was holding his coat with both hands over his heart. She said his last word was a name. "Margaret," he said. My mother's name. The woman who had bought him that coat 50 years before, so that he would have one warm thing that would last, and then he was gone. I will not try to describe the grief. If you have lost someone, then you already know, and no words are needed. And if you have not yet lost someone, then no words could make you understand, and I would not want to try. I will only say that the grief was made 1,000 times heavier by the shame, by the memory of that night in the Grand Hotel, by every meeting I chose over him, by every time I looked at my watch, by the coat. Oh, the coat. What I would have given, in those first dark days, to see him walk through the door one more time in that old brown coat. I would have run to him. I would have held him. I would have told him he looked like the most handsome man in the whole world. I would have told him I was sorry. I would have told him the truth. That I was not ashamed of him. That I had never truly been ashamed of him. That I had only been a small and foolish and frightened man. And that he was the greatest man I had ever known. But it was too late. It is the oldest and saddest lesson in the world, and every person has to learn it for themselves, always too late. You never know that the last time is the last time. The funeral taught me something I have never forgotten. We held it in the small church in our old town, the same church where my mother and father had been married 50 years before. I expected only a few people to come. My father was a poor, quiet, retired carpenter. He was not important. He was not rich. Who would come to say goodbye to such a man? But when I arrived at the church, I could not believe my eyes. The church was full. It was completely full, and there were even people standing outside in the cold, waiting to come in. There were hundreds of them, hundreds of people I had never seen before in my life. One by one, after the service, they came to me and to Emily, and they took our hands, and they told us their stories. An old woman told me my father had built her a ramp so she could leave her house again. A man told me my father had fixed his roof for free when he had no money, and had never once mentioned it to anyone. A young family told me that when they first came to town with nothing, they woke one morning to find a table and 2 chairs by their door, and they never knew who left them, until today. A grown man, near tears, told me that when he was a boy, my father had quietly paid for his school books every year, so that he could keep going to school. Story after story after story. All these years, all these quiet kindnesses, all this love given secretly, expecting nothing, by a poor man in an old brown coat. I stood in that church in my fine black suit, and I understood something that struck me like a blow to the chest. My father was not a poor man. My father was the richest man in that entire town. He was rich in the only way that matters. He had spent his whole life giving quietly, and now the whole town had come, in the cold, to give it back to him, all at once, with their love. And I, his own son, with my big house and my important job, I had been ashamed of him. I had been ashamed of the richest and greatest man I had ever known. A week after the funeral, Emily and I went to my father's little house to sort through his things. It was a hard day. Every object was a memory. His tools, the ones he had left, his chair by the window, the small wooden boxes he had made with their careful little joints, the photograph of my mother on the table by his bed. Emily cried. I could not cry. My grief had gone somewhere deep and cold, somewhere below tears. And there, hanging on a hook by the door where it had always hung, was the coat, the old brown coat. I took it down from the hook. It was lighter than I expected. It smelled of him. It smelled of sawdust and old wool, and the particular warm smell of my father, a smell I had known my whole life, a smell I would never smell again. I held it in my arms, and something in my chest broke open. We should throw it away, Emily said softly, wiping her eyes. It's just an old rag. He should have let us buy him a nice one. He never would. And I almost did. I almost put it in the pile of things to throw away. My hands were moving to fold it up and set it aside. But then I felt something. As I folded the coat, my hand pressed against the front of it, against the chest, over that same spot where my father had always rested his hand. And I felt something inside. Something firm, something hidden. Something sewn into the lining where you could not see it from the outside. I stopped. My heart began to beat very fast. Emily, I said, there's something inside the coat. She came over. We turned the coat over in our hands, feeling along the lining, and there, sewn into the inside of the coat, over the left side, over the place above the heart, was a small, careful, hidden pocket. My father had made it himself. The stitches were small and neat, a carpenter's careful work, a work of many patient hours. It had been sewn shut, sewn closed to keep something safe. My hands were shaking. I took a small knife, one of my father's own tools, and I carefully, gently cut the stitches open, and I reached inside. The first thing I pulled out was money, not a little money, a lot of money. A thick, folded stack of bills, old and new, some of them so old they were soft as cloth from years of being folded. It was more money than I would ever have believed my poor father could have saved. I counted it later. It was a fortune. It was the savings of a lifetime. It was every coin he had not spent on a new coat. Every dollar he had earned building furniture late into the night, saved and hidden, and kept safe, over decades, sewn into the lining of the coat he wore every day so that he would never, ever lose it. But that was not all. There was more inside the hidden pocket, and the money, it turned out, was the smallest part of it. There was a photograph. An old photograph, worn soft at the edges from being held. It was a picture of my mother and father on their wedding day. My mother in a simple white dress, and my father, young and handsome and smiling, wearing a brand new brown wool coat, the very coat I was holding in my hands, the same one, 50 years later. There was a small lock of hair, tied with a faded ribbon, my mother's hair. He had kept it all these years over his heart. There was a tiny knitted baby shoe, and then another one, a little different. 2 baby shoes, one for me, one for Emily. My mother had knitted them. My father had kept them, sewn into his coat, next to his heart, for 40 years. And there was a letter. The letter was folded many times. On the outside, in my father's careful hand, were written 2 words, "For my children." My hands were shaking so hard that I could barely open it. Emily was crying now, and so, at last, was I. I unfolded the letter and I read it out loud, in that quiet little house, with the winter light coming through the window, and I will read it to you now, exactly as he wrote it. My dear Daniel and my dear Emily, the letter began. If you are reading this, then I am gone, and you have found my coat, and you have found the little pocket I made in it, and I am glad. I was always a little afraid that you would throw the coat away before you found it. I hope you did not. I am sorry it is such an old and ugly coat. I know it embarrassed you. I saw it in your faces. I understood. Please do not feel bad about that. You were young and you had fine new lives. And that is exactly what I always wanted for you. I am not angry. I could never be angry at you. You were the greatest joy of my whole life. But I want to tell you why I never bought a new coat. I never told you while I was alive, because I did not want you to feel bad, and because your mother always said I was too sentimental, and she was right. Your mother bought me this coat with her own saved money, as a gift, on the week we were married. It was the finest thing I ever owned. I wore it on the day I married her, the happiest day of my life. I wore it on the day you were born, Daniel, when I held you for the first time and cried. I wore it on the day you were born, Emily, my little girl. I wore it to your mother's funeral, the saddest day, when I wrapped it around myself because it was the last warm thing she ever gave me, and I felt that as long as I wore it, a little part of her was still holding me. This coat has held everything I love. It held you too, one under each arm, on cold winter walks, do you remember? It held your mother's memory, and in the little pocket, over my heart, it held the only truly valuable things I have ever owned: her picture, her hair, your baby shoes, and the money I saved for you. The money is for you now. I know you are both successful, and I know you do not need it. But a father needs to give his children something. It is not much next to your big houses and your fine cars. But it is everything I had. And every coin of it was saved with love, and I want you to have it. Use it for my grandchildren. Send them to good schools. Keep them warm. Tell them their grandfather loved them, even the ones I never got to meet. Do you remember, Daniel, the winter walks, when you and Emily were small? Do you remember how I would open this coat and pull you both inside it, one under each arm, to keep you warm on the way home? Those were the finest moments of my life. Not my wedding, though that was close. Not the day I finished building something beautiful. It was those cold walks, with the two of you laughing inside my coat. Whenever I put this coat on, I feel you both there still, small and warm against me. That is another reason I could never give it away. How could I give away the coat that still holds my children? I know I was not a fine or an important man. I could not give you a big house, or a fine car, or a famous name. I gave you only what I had. I gave you my time, and my hands, and my whole heart, and every coin I could save. I hope it was enough. I have worried all my life that it was not enough. But a father can only give what he has, and I gave you all of mine. I was never ashamed of being a poor man. I want you to know that. I had cold feet as a boy and rough hands as a man, and I wore the same coat for 30 years, but I had your mother's love, and I had you too, and I did work that I was proud of with my own 2 hands. I was the richest man I ever knew. I would not trade my life for any life in the world. Do not be sad for too long. Live your good lives, love your children the way I loved you, and every now and then, when the winter comes and the wind is cold, think of your old father and know that wherever I am warm, because I am wearing the coat your mother gave me, and my whole life is sewn inside it, close to my heart. With all my love, always and forever. Your father, Arthur. I stopped reading. I could not go on. Emily and I sat on the floor of that little house, 2 grown and successful people, a partner and a lawyer, with our big houses and our fine clothes, and we held that old brown coat between us, and we wept like children. We wept for our father. We wept for our mother. We wept for the baby shoes, and the lock of hair, and the wedding photograph, and every coin saved with love. And most of all, we wept for our own blindness, for all the years we had looked at the outside of the coat and never once, not once, imagined what was sewn inside. That was the day I finally understood my father. I understood, at last, why he put his hand over his chest when I offered to buy him a new one. He was not being stubborn. He was not being proud. He was protecting the most precious things in his world. He was holding his wife's memory and his children's baby shoes and his whole life close to his heart. And I had called it an old rag. I had pulled him aside in a grand hotel and told him he embarrassed me. I had let him walk out into the cold and take the long bus ride home, alone, carrying his whole life sewn over a heart that I had just broken. I would give everything I own, everything, all of it, the big house and the fine car and the important job. I would give it all away in a single moment, just to have 5 minutes with my father again. Just to put my arms around him in that old brown coat and tell him that I understood now, that I was so sorry, that I loved him, that he was the finest and richest man I have ever known, and that I had known it all along, underneath, even when I was too small and too foolish to say it. But we do not get those 5 minutes. That is not how life works. We get the chance while they are alive, and we so often waste it, and then we do not get it again. So if your mother is still alive, or your father, or whoever it was that saved their coins and wore their old coat so that you could have your better life, then I am telling you, please do not wait. Do not look at your watch. Do not be ashamed of their old clothes or their rough hands or their simple ways. Go to them, sit with them, hold their hand, tell them you understand, tell them thank you. Tell them today, while there is still time, because the day is coming, sooner than you think, when there will be no more time, and you will give anything for just 5 more minutes. I kept the coat. Emily wanted me to have it, and I wanted it more than I have ever wanted anything. I took it home. I did not put it in a closet. I hung it on a hook by my own front door, where I would see it every single day. My children asked me about it. Dad, why do you keep that old coat by the door? It's so worn out. It doesn't match anything. And I sat them down, my son and my daughter, and I told them the story, the whole story, the wedding, the winter walks, the saved coins, the night in the grand hotel that I am so ashamed of, the little pockets sewn over the heart, the baby shoes, the letter. And they listened, my children, with wide eyes, and by the end they were crying too. For a grandfather, they had been too young to really remember. That coat, I told them, is the most valuable thing in this whole house. It is worth more than the house itself. It is worth more than everything we own, because it is full of love, and love is the only thing, in the end, that is worth anything at all. Never forget that. Never be like your father was when he was young and foolish. Never be ashamed of the people who love you. Never mistake the outside of a thing for what is inside. Now I am an old man myself. My hair is going white. My hands are not as strong as they used to be. My children are grown, with children of their own, and I am the grandfather now. And in the winter, when the wind is cold, I take the old brown coat down from the hook by the door, and I put it on. It is still warm. It is still, after all these years, the warmest thing I own. And I feel, when I wear it, that my father is with me and my mother is with me, wrapping their arms around me, the way they did on those winter walks so long ago, one child held safe under each arm. Sometimes, when I wear it, I put my own hand over the chest, over the little pocket, the way my father always did. The pocket is empty now. The money is gone, spent the way he wanted, on his grandchildren, on their schools, on keeping them warm. The photograph and the lock of hair and the baby shoes and the letter, I keep those in a safe place, close to me. But I sewed the little pocket shut again, with my own hands, with careful stitches, the way he taught me in the shed so long ago. And now, when I rest my hand over that empty pocket, I am not holding money, or hair, or shoes. I am holding my father. I am holding my mother. I am holding every winter walk, and every story at night, and every quiet kindness, and every hour of love that made me who I am. I go and visit their graves. My mother and my father, side by side now, together again at last, in the small churchyard in our old town. I bring flowers. I sit with them. And I tell them my stories, the way my father asked me to, that afternoon when I looked at the clock instead. I tell them everything. I'm not too busy anymore. I have learned, too late for them, but not too late for me. that there is nothing in this world more important than sitting with the people you love and telling them your stories while there is still time to tell. I have many fine coats in my closet. Expensive coats. New coats. Coats that match my expensive clothes and impress important people. But I only ever wear the old one. Because I understand now what my father knew all along, what he tried to teach me with his stories about the one pair of shoes, what he held over his heart every day for 30 years. I understand that the things that look poor on the outside are so often the richest on the inside. I understand that love does not care what you wear. I understand that a coat is not a coat. A coat can be a whole life. A coat can be everything a good man ever loved, sewn quietly over his heart and worn every single day, in plain sight, while his foolish children looked at it and saw only something old, and never knew, until it was too late, that they were looking at the most precious thing in the world. My father wore the same old coat every single day for more than 30 years. I know why now, and I will wear it too for all the days that I have left, until I hand it, one winter, to a child of my own, and tell them the story, and teach them the thing my father taught me, the thing I hope with all my heart that you will not have to learn too late. Go to the ones who love you. Go to them now, and never, ever be ashamed of the old coat.